Chapter 1. What are you doing? It was raining. Mahiru Shina sat alone on a swing in the park when Amain Fujimiya first spoke to her. Amain had begun living on his own shortly after entering his first year of high school. In the apartment next to his lived an Angel. Of course, Angel was only a metaphor. Still, Mahiru Shina was so beautiful that the comparison hardly felt exaggerated. Her flax-colored hair fell straight down her back, carefully maintained, smooth and glossy even now as rain soaked into it. Her skin was fair and flawless, her features delicate, an elegant nose, large eyes framed by long lashes, and soft, pale pink lips. All of it came together to give her a doll-like beauty that seemed almost unreal. She attended the same school as Amain and was in the same year, though they were in different classes. He knew her mostly through rumors. People called her a perfect honor student, top scores in every exam, athletic enough to excel in gym class as well. From what he had heard, Mahiru Shina had no weaknesses. She was intelligent, capable, polite, and humble, with a face pretty enough to stop people in their tracks. It was no wonder she was so popular. Many boys would have been ecstatic or painfully jealous at the thought of living next to such a girl. Amain, however, had never planned to do anything about it. Nor did he think he could. That wasn't to say he didn't find her charming. Of course he did. But they were simply neighbors. Nothing more. They rarely spoke. At most, they passed each other in the mornings. Getting involved with her would only invite unwanted attention and envy from the boys who idolized her. If living next to her were enough to get close, those boys wouldn't be suffering so much. Besides, admiration was not the same as love. To Amain, Mahiru Shina was someone best appreciated from afar. So he never imagined any sweet or bittersweet relationship forming between them. He never expected to become involved with her in any way. That was why he stopped in his tracks when he saw her. The park lay between the school and the apartment complex. The rain was pouring down heavily, so much that everyone else had already run home. Yet there she was. Mahiru Shina sat on a swing, alone, without an umbrella, letting the rain soak her through. What is she doing? Dark clouds blanketed the sky, blocking out what little light remained. The rain had been falling since morning, and visibility was poor. Even so, her flax-colored hair and school uniform stood out unmistakably. Amain couldn't understand why she was there. She wasn't waiting for anyone. She didn't seem to care that she was drenched. She simply stared ahead, listlessly. Her face, already pale by nature, looked almost bloodless now. If she stayed like this, she was bound to catch a cold. Yet she made no move to leave. It seemed deliberate, as though she wanted to remain there. Perhaps it wasn't his place to interfere. That was what Amain thought as he prepared to cross the park and go home. But just before he did, he noticed the expression on her face, twisted, fragile, as though she were on the verge of tears. He scratched his head. He had no reason to get involved. Still, leaving someone behind with that expression would weigh on his conscience. That was all. What are you doing? He spoke casually, his tone deliberately aloof, making it clear he had no ulterior motives. Mahiru slowly lifted her head. Her rain-soaked hair clung heavily to her shoulders as she turned to face him. She was beautiful as always. Even drenched, her radiance remained undiminished. If anything, the rain only accentuated it, like an ornament adorning her. A girl standing quietly in the rain, painfully pretty. Her clear, water spirit-like eyes met his. At the very least, she seemed to recognize him. After all, they did occasionally see each other in the mornings. Still, her caramel-colored eyes held a hint of wariness. Fujimiya-san, do you need something? So she remembers my name. At the same time, he could tell she wasn't letting her guard down. They might have exchanged greetings before, but they were still strangers. Given how often boys approached her with less than pure intentions, it made sense. Nothing in particular, Amain replied. I was just concerned seeing you alone in the rain. I see. Her voice was soft and gentle, yet firm. Thank you for your concern, but I would like to remain here. Please leave me be. She didn't sound hostile, but the message was clear. Well, guess that's that. She was obviously hiding something, but Amain had no intention of prying, especially given how distant she was. He had spoken on impulse. That was all. If she wanted to stay, that was her choice. Mahiru looked at him skeptically, her expression fleeting and unreadable. I understand, Amain said. Continuing the conversation would only annoy her. It was better to leave now. Whether she thought well of him or not didn't matter. They had no relationship to begin with. He turned to go, yet something still bothered him. "You'll catch a cold," he said, holding out the umbrella. "Take it. You don't need to return it." In the end, he couldn't help being a busybody. If she fell ill, it would bother him. That was his excuse as he pushed the umbrella into her hands. Before she could say anything, he turned away. He left quickly, and behind him, he heard her call out. But her voice was too soft, swallowed by the sound of the rain. He didn't look back. All he hoped was that she wouldn't catch a cold. Perhaps because of that, the lingering guilt he felt for nearly ignoring her faded a little as he headed home. Since she didn't want to talk, he wouldn't get involved. They were nothing to each other. That was how Amain thought, back then, as he returned to his apartment. Chapter 2. You're noisy. Amain, your nose is noisy. You're noisy. The very next day, it was Amain who caught a cold. His classmate. No, his bad friend. Itsuki Akazawa stared at him with open disbelief as Amain continued to sniff loudly, failing every attempt to clear his nose. He wanted to snort back at him, but even that failed. Instead, he kept sniffing, desperately trying to breathe through a completely blocked nose. His head throbbed painfully, whether from the cold itself or from the pressure in his sinuses, he couldn't tell. He'd already taken some medicine he bought from the pharmacy, but it had done nothing. If anything, he felt worse. His face twisted as he pressed another tissue to his nose. Itsuki, meanwhile, looked more dumbfounded than concerned. "Weren't you fine yesterday? Got caught in the rain. You serious? Didn't you bring an umbrella? Lend it to someone." Naturally, Amain couldn't say who he had lent it to, so he brushed it off vaguely. Ironically, Mahiru herself had looked perfectly fine at school that day, healthy, even radiant. Seeing her like that almost felt cruel, considering he was the one who had given her the umbrella. Still, this was his own fault. He hadn't taken a hot bath afterward to warm himself up. But seriously, Itsuki said, shaking his head, lending an umbrella when it's pouring like that? Aren't you a little too nice? Didn't really have a choice. So who was it that made you risk catching a cold? A lost kid. It sounded better than saying someone with a childlike build, especially since she was actually the same age as him. Oh, I get it, Itsuki nodded. She did have that lost kid look. Only then did Amain realize it. Back then, Mahiru's expression had been exactly like that, like a child who had lost sight of their parents. "You're a good guy," Itsuki said with a grin. Oblivious to Amain's thoughts, Itsuki continued, clearly enjoying himself. "Well, whoever it was, you probably just wiped yourself down and called it a day, right? That's why you caught a cold. How do you know? Anyone can tell how badly you treat yourself just by looking at your place. That's why you caught a cold, idiot." Once told off, Amain had no comeback. Itsuki wasn't wrong. Amain barely cared for himself. His room was a mess, cleaning was an afterthought, and his meals consisted mostly of convenience store bentos, supplements, or eating out. "And you say you're living alone," Itsuki muttered, staring at him in disbelief. Honestly, it was a miracle Amain didn't get sick more often. "Go straight home and rest," Itsuki said. "We've got the weekend coming up. Get better." "Yeah. Would be nice if you had a girlfriend to take care of you. You're noisy. And you already have one. Shut up." Itsuki smiled proudly as Amain reached for another tissue, irritated. Time passed, and Amain's condition worsened. What started as a headache and runny nose escalated into a sore throat and overwhelming fatigue, draining the strength from his entire body. After school, he dragged himself home, his steps far heavier than he expected. By the time he reached the apartment complex, it felt like an achievement. Inside the elevator, he leaned against the wall, breathing unevenly. Hot. He'd managed to endure it at school, but the moment he relaxed, so close to home, his body rebelled all at once. Even the elevator's gentle motion made him feel sick. Finally, it stopped at his floor. He stepped out slowly, dragging his feet down the corridor, then froze. Standing there was a girl with flax-colored hair, someone he never expected to speak to again. Mahiru Shina. She looked perfectly fine, her skin clear, her expression lively. Anyone would have assumed she was the one who'd caught a cold, not him. The contrast was almost unfair. In her hands was the neatly folded umbrella he'd given her yesterday. "I told you, you didn't have to return it." "But shouldn't I return what I borrowed?" Her voice trailed off as she took in Amain's face. "Are you running a fever? That's none of your business." The timing couldn't have been worse. Amain frowned. Whether she returned the umbrella or not didn't matter. What mattered was that she could clearly tell why he was sick. But it's because I borrowed it. That's just something I chose to do. It has nothing to do with you. It does, she said firmly. If I hadn't taken it. It's nothing. You don't need to worry. Amain didn't want anyone feeling responsible over something he'd done on impulse. But Mahiru clearly wasn't convinced. Worry filled her pretty face. That's enough. See you. Uncomfortable under her gaze, Amain decided to escape. He took the umbrella, reached into his pocket for his keys, and that was when it happened. The moment he opened the door, his strength gave out. His body lurched backward toward the corridor railing. Oh, he braced himself for the impact. But instead, his arm was suddenly grabbed. I really can't leave you alone, a soft voice said. His fever-fogged mind barely registered the words. I'll return the favor. Before he could process what was happening, Mahiru supported his weight and opened his door. I'm coming in, she said quietly. Please forgive me, but I have to. In his weakened state, Amain offered no resistance as she guided him inside. It was the first time he'd ever returned home with a girl his age. He didn't have a girlfriend to take care of him, but it seemed an angel had decided to do so instead. In her hands was the neatly folded umbrella he'd given her yesterday. I told you, you didn't have to return it. But shouldn't I return what I borrowed? Her voice trailed off as she took in Amain's face. Are you running a fever? That's none of your business. The timing couldn't have been worse. Amain frowned. Whether she returned the umbrella or not didn't matter. What mattered was that she could clearly tell why he was sick. But it's because I borrowed it. That's just something I chose to do. It has nothing to do with you. It does, she said firmly. If I hadn't taken it. It's nothing. You don't need to worry. Amain didn't want anyone feeling responsible over something he'd done on impulse. But Mahiru clearly wasn't convinced. Worry filled her pretty face. That's enough. See you. Uncomfortable under her gaze, Amain decided to escape. He took the umbrella, reached into his pocket for his keys, and that was when it happened. The moment he opened the door, his strength gave out. His body lurched backward toward the corridor railing. Oh, he braced himself for the impact. But instead, his arm was suddenly grabbed. I really can't leave you alone, a soft voice said. His fever-fogged mind barely registered the words. I'll return the favor. Before he could process what was happening, Mahiru supported his weight and opened his door. I'm coming in, she said quietly. Please forgive me, but I have to. In his weakened state, Amain offered no resistance as she guided him inside. It was the first time he'd ever returned home with a girl his age. He didn't have a girlfriend to take care of him, but it seemed an angel had decided to do so instead. Chapter 3. Because of his fever, Amain noticed the state of his apartment far too late. The moment Mahiru stepped inside and reality hit him, he instantly regretted letting her in. Amain lived in a 1 SLDK apartment. For someone living alone, it was ridiculously spacious, a large living room, a bedroom, and even a storage room. His parents were well off, and after thinking about safety and location, they had insisted he live there. Amain didn't argue, but honestly, he thought it was overkill. Living alone in such a big place was more than he could manage. And to make things worse, Amain was terrible at cleaning. As expected, both the living room and the bedroom were complete disasters. This is really unsightly. The angel, no, the savior, didn't hold back at all, despite her cute appearance. It really was awful, and Amain had no way to argue. If he'd known someone was coming over, he would have at least shoved things aside. But now it was too late. Mahiru let out a quiet sigh, but she didn't leave. Instead, she guided Amain toward the bedroom. On the way there, they almost tripped several times over the mess. Amain painfully realized that this was entirely his fault, and that he seriously needed to clean up someday. I'll leave for now. Change before I come back. That's fine, right? You're coming back? I wouldn't feel right leaving a sick person alone. It seemed Mahiru was thinking about the same thing Amain was, the incident from earlier, so he couldn't say anything in response. After she left, Amain did as he was told and changed into his home clothes. It's such a mess. There's nowhere to step. How do you even live like this? He heard her muttering outside and felt deeply apologetic. Once he finished changing, he lay down and promptly fell asleep. When he finally forced his heavy eyelids open, the first thing he saw was flax-colored hair. Looking up, he found Mahiru standing there, silently watching him. So it hadn't been a dream. What time is it? 7 p.m. You slept for a few hours. She answered briefly and handed him a cup of isotonic drink as he sat up. Gratefully, Amain took a sip and looked around. His body felt a little better, probably thanks to the nap. Then he noticed a faint chill on his forehead. When he touched it, his fingers brushed against something slightly stiff. A cooling sheet. It definitely wasn't something he owned. I brought it from my house, Mahiru said simply. That explained it. His apartment had neither cooling sheets nor isotonic drinks. She must have brought everything herself. Thanks for bringing all this. No worries. Her cool response made him grimace a little. She was probably helping him out of guilt, not because she wanted to. After all, it wasn't easy being alone in the apartment of a boy she barely knew. Anyway, the medicine's on the table. You shouldn't take it on an empty stomach. Are you hungry? A little. I see. I made some porridge, so please eat that. You made it, Sheena. Who else would, she replied. If you don't want it, I'll eat it. No, I'll eat it. Please. He never expected her to care this much, let alone cook for him, so he panicked a little. He quickly lowered his head in thanks. Mahiru stared at him briefly, then handed him the thermometer. I'll bring the porridge. Measure your temperature. Okay. As he unbuttoned his shirt to use the thermometer, Mahiru suddenly turned away. Please do that when I'm not in the room. Her voice sounded flustered. When Amain glanced over, her face was faintly red. He found her reaction kind of interesting. Boys didn't really need to hide their chests, but the moment he exposed skin, Mahiru had looked away. Her face, and even her ears, were slightly red. Now I get why everyone says she's cute. Amain had always thought Mahiru was beautiful, but distant, like a perfectly made sculpture. Pretty and cute, sure, but untouchable. Seeing her embarrassed like this made her seem more human. And somehow, even cuter. Hurry up and bring the porridge. I was going to without you telling me. They weren't close enough for him to say what he was really thinking. She'd probably think he was weird, so he kept it to himself. Mahiru hurried out of the room, moving carefully, probably because of the mess. Most likely because of the mess. Watching her leave, Amain let out a quiet sigh. I guess it's guilt and responsibility. Normally, a girl wouldn't enter the apartment of an unfamiliar guy just to take care of him. It was dangerous. Yet Mahiru did it anyway. She must have felt really responsible. And since Amain clearly showed no interest in her, that probably made her feel safer. I brought it. Her voice came with a cautious knock. She didn't enter right away, probably worried he wasn't dressed. I'm not done measuring yet. I told you to do that when I'm not. Sorry, I spaced out. He apologized, tucked the thermometer under his arm, and soon heard a soft beep. 38.3 degrees Celsius. High, but not serious enough to be hospitalized. After buttoning his shirt properly, he called out, You can come in. Mahiru entered carefully, carrying a tray with a clay pot. She relaxed when she saw he was fully dressed. Your temperature? 38.3 degrees Celsius. I should be fine after medicine and some sleep. Store-bought medicine only treats symptoms, she said firmly. Get proper rest and let your immune system work. Though it sounded like scolding, Amain could tell she was worried. His chest felt strangely warm. Mahiru placed the tray down and opened the lid. Inside was thin plum porridge, clearly made to be gentle on the stomach. The plums weren't for taste, but because they were said to help with colds. It wasn't steaming, but still warm, clearly cooled on purpose. As she served it into a bowl, Amain watched quietly. The plum pieces were neatly prepared, seeds removed, their red color faintly mixing with the white porridge. Here. It shouldn't be hot. Thanks. He took a spoonful and paused. Mahiru looked at him. What? Are you expecting me to feed you? I'm not doing that. No. I was just thinking you can cook. Anyone living alone should be able to. That one hurt. And before you cook, clean your room. That hurt too. She seemed to read his thoughts as she added another precise jab. Amain muttered quietly and finally ate. The porridge spread gently across his tongue, the simple taste of rice and salt. The plum added a mild sourness that surprisingly boosted his appetite. He wasn't a fan of salty plums, but this balance was nice. If he were healthy, he'd probably turn it into Chizuki. It's good. Thank you, she replied. Though anyone could make it. Her face was calm, but there was a small smile there, different from the one she showed at school. It was softer, relieved. Without realizing it, Amain stared. Fujimiya-san. Nothing. The smile vanished quickly, and for some reason, he felt disappointed. Brushing the feeling aside, Amain continued eating his porridge, one spoonful at a time. Chapter 4. Anyway, please rest for today. Drink plenty of water. And use this to wipe your sweat. Mahiru placed everything neatly on the side table as she spoke. Another packet of isotonic drink, a basin of water, a towel, and even a spare cooling sheet. I've prepared the basin already. Just soak the towel, wring it out, and wipe yourself. She said it calmly, like it was second nature. After dinner, she moved quickly, efficiently, checking and double-checking as if afraid she might forget something. And honestly, she probably shouldn't have stayed this long. This was the apartment of a boy she barely knew. Anyone would have felt awkward. Amain certainly did. So he didn't stop her. Instead, he watched silently as she looked around once more, making sure nothing was missing. For someone who says she's only doing this out of obligation, she's way too thorough. Mahiru could be sharp with her words, but when it came to responsibility, she took it seriously. That much was obvious. Amain gave a small, wry smile. He was starting to get used to her. Well, we probably won't get involved with each other after this, he said quietly. But thanks for taking care of me. It was true. This was a one-time thing. After today, they'd go back to being strangers. And because of that, there was something he wanted to ask. The medicine was starting to work. His head felt lighter, his thoughts clearer, though his body still felt heavy. Can I ask you something? What is it? Mahiru turned toward him once she finished setting everything down. Why were you sitting on the swing that day? In the rain. He hesitated, then added, Did you get into a fight with your boyfriend or something? That rainy day was the reason all of this had happened. Back then, she'd been sitting there, soaked to the bone, with that expression, like a lost child. That was why he'd handed her the umbrella without thinking. But I never really understood why she was there. She looked like she was waiting for someone. So yeah, I assumed it might have been a lover's quarrel or something. But the moment I said that, she stared at me like I'd just said something ridiculous. I'm sorry, she said flatly, but I don't have a boyfriend. And I have no intention of getting one. Huh? What? She frowned slightly. Why do you assume I have one? Well, you're popular. I figured you'd have at least one. Or two. Talking to her like that, she felt more like a normal girl than the image everyone else had of her. To most people, she was this innocent, obedient honor student, an angelic beauty you'd fall for at first sight. Top of the year academically, good at sports, amazing at cooking. Of course she'd be popular. I'd seen guys flirting with her. I even knew classmates who were clearly into her. With all those options, I just couldn't imagine her not dating at all. That's why I said one or two. The instant those words left my mouth, her face stiffened. Absolutely not, she said coldly. I am not someone without restraint who dates multiple men at once. The temperature in the room dropped instantly. I knew right away I'd stepped on a landmine. For a moment, I actually felt chilly. I don't know why, but the room seriously felt like it had turned into a freezer. Sorry, I said quickly. That's not what I meant. My bad. No, she replied after a pause. I may have been a bit heated myself. The cold atmosphere vanished the moment she said that. Calling it heated felt wrong, though. It had been more like a snowstorm. I decided not to mention it. That wasn't the reason, she continued. I just wanted to calm my thoughts. Instead, I caused you worry, and you caught a cold. I sincerely apologize. It's fine, I told her. I was just being a busybody. I don't want you feeling guilty over it. Anyway, this is where we stop getting involved, Sheena. She blinked and stared at me like she couldn't believe what she'd just heard. Was she really that shocked? There's nothing common between us, I went on. You're the angel, the beautiful genius at the top of our year. I don't want to get carried away. Did you think I felt lucky, having you owe me a favor? She awkwardly looked away. I guess I did. I smiled wryly. It probably wasn't the first time something like this had happened to her. Guys doing favors, hoping to use them as leverage to get closer. She must have dealt with that plenty before. No wonder she was so defensive that day in the rain. I couldn't blame her. It's a pain, getting involved with guys you don't like, huh? I said. Yeah. Obviously. Honestly, her agreeing so easily surprised me. The perfect, obedient angel had her own likes, dislikes, and problems. That realization made her feel more human to me. She must have noticed she let something slip, because she glared at me, probably annoyed that I'd baited her into admitting it. That alone was proof enough. Mahiru Sheena had emotions, just like anyone else. Well, I'm relieved, I said lightly. Turns out even angels have problems like humans. Please don't call me that, she snapped. She looked embarrassed and annoyed. I couldn't help laughing. It's not like I have any urgent business with you, I said. I don't have a reason to pester you. Her eyes widened in surprise, and then she smiled wryly herself. Later, I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, remembering how she'd bowed seriously before going back to her apartment. The medicine was working, but my body still felt stiff. The moment I relaxed, sleep started pulling me under. I closed my eyes, replaying the day. No one would believe me if I told them an angel, albeit a sharp-tongued one, had taken care of me. It wasn't worth telling anyone anyway. What happened that day would stay a secret between just the two of us. Secret. The word made my chest feel strangely ticklish. From the next day on, we'd go back to being strangers. That's what I told myself as I drifted off to sleep. Chapter 5. As declared, the relationship between Amain and Mahiru remained that of passing strangers. Amain recovered the day after she had taken care of him. By chance, he ran into Mahiru at a convenience store while shopping, but they didn't really interact. Still, she seemed faintly relieved upon seeing that he looked fine. Classes resumed on Monday, and nothing changed. For them, or for anyone else. If there was a small difference, it was that Amain now found himself bowing his head slightly when greeting others as he arrived at school. Oh, you're looking great there, Amain. Thanks to your care. Itsuki had been genuinely worried after seeing Amain half dead the previous week on their way home. He had even waited at the school entrance to check on him. Over the weekend, he'd sent a blunt message. You ain't dead, right? Amain had replied that he was fine, but Itsuki hadn't fully believed him. Only after seeing Amain standing there, looking lively, did Itsuki let out an exaggerated sigh of relief. Well, anyone would worry after seeing you like that. You're better now, but you should really pay more attention to how you live. Start with cleaning up your place. That sounds like something someone else said. Nothing. Just something I heard over the weekend. I'll clean it up soon. No, do it now. Itsuki shot back. Amain ignored him. There was no way that Disaster Zone could be fixed in half a day. He shook his head, and Itsuki, looking dumbfounded, decided not to press further. Well, it's your place. Do whatever you want. Just make sure there's enough room to walk next time I visit. I'll see what I can do. As Amain frowned and changed into his indoor shoes, a sudden commotion from the neighboring classroom caught his attention. Without thinking, he glanced over. Through the window, he saw Mahiru, radiant as ever, surrounded by boys and girls alike. She wore her usual calm smile as she responded to them. Compared to the quiet, rain-soaked Mahiru from several days ago, she looked like a completely different person. Amain smiled wryly. Noticing his gaze, Itsuki followed it and immediately understood. Ah, Shina-san, still as popular as ever. Well, she is pretty. She's the angel, after all. You find Shina cute too, Itsuki? Of course. But I've got Kai, so she's just someone to admire from afar. Stop flexing already. The Kai Itsuki referred to was his girlfriend, Chitose Shirakawa. The two of them were shamelessly affectionate, and whenever they were together, the sheer brightness was almost painful to look at. Amain made a shooing gesture. Seriously, stop flexing. Itsuki only laughed. That guy really was hopeless. What about you, Amain? Itsuki asked. Don't you think Shina's cute? She's beautiful. That's all. That's boring. Well, she's a flower on a peak we can't reach. There's no point getting involved. All we can do is look. You're not wrong. By coincidence, Mahiru had taken care of him a few days earlier. But that didn't change the fact that they lived in different worlds. Amain couldn't imagine a future where he and Mahiru would truly get along. Outstanding people naturally gravitated toward others like themselves, and Amain, painfully aware of his own mediocrity, had no business being involved with someone as capable and adorable as Mahiru Shina. Yes, he believed, without a doubt, that their paths would never cross again. What are you eating? That certainty was completely overturned when Amain was standing on his veranda, sipping his jelly drink and gazing outside. Chapter 6. Amain found it too troublesome to head down to the convenience store, so he leaned against the veranda railing, slurping on the jelly drink he usually kept stocked at home while breathing in the cold night air. That was when Mahiru appeared on the neighboring veranda. The moment she noticed Amain, she leaned slightly over the railing, spotted the jelly drink in his hand, and frowned. Amain hadn't expected her to talk to him and froze for a moment. You do know, he said defensively. This jelly replenishes my energy in just a few seconds, right? Are you planning to eat that for dinner? What else would I eat? A high school boy with a healthy appetite plans to live off this. Stop being a busybody. Normally, Amain would have grabbed a bento from the convenience store or some side dishes from the supermarket. But he wasn't in the mood to cook, and cup ramen didn't appeal to him either, so he'd settled for jelly instead. He probably would have eaten some snacks later. What about cooking? Mahiru asked. Can't do it, won't do it. You know that already. And you can't tidy up either, she said flatly. It's honestly impressive you've managed to live alone. Shut up. That's none of your business. The painfully accurate criticism made him frown as he finished the rest of his jelly. He had suffered a few days ago and planned to clean up, but being nagged about it repeatedly had the opposite effect. Amain glanced at Mahiru, wondering why she was being so persistent. She stared back at him for a moment before letting out a small sigh. Please wait here. Before he could respond or refuse, Mahiru disappeared back into her apartment. A moment later, he heard the window slide shut. What was that about? She told him to wait, but for what? He looked toward her apartment in confusion, but of course there was no response. Well, guess I'm done cooling off. Time to head back. Still, he waited as instructed. The winter night air was colder than he'd expected. A sweater alone wasn't enough. White breath escaped his lips as he exhaled. Honestly, he wasn't sure why he was waiting so obediently. Then, a faint electronic buzzing echoed down the corridor. Amain immediately turned toward the door. There was only one person it coin be. Carefully avoiding the piles of clothes and magazines, he shuffled toward the entrance. He didn't bother checking the peephole. He already knew. Dragging his slippers along, he unlocked the door. As expected, flax-colored hair fluttered slightly beneath his line of sight. What are you doing? He asked. I've had enough of watching you live like this, Mahiru replied bluntly. These are leftovers. Here. She thrust her hands forward. They were much smaller than Amain's, and they held a Tupperware container. Through the translucent lid, he could make out the vague shapes of cooked food inside. The container was still warm, tiny droplets of condensation clinging to the surface. Amain blinked a few times. Seeing his confusion, Mahiru let out a long sigh. You don't eat properly. Supplements are supplements. They're not meant to be your main meal. Are you my mom? I believe what I'm saying is perfectly reasonable, she replied. Also, shouldn't you clean your apartment? It's difficult to even stand in here. She glanced past him into the room and narrowed her eyes in exasperation. Amain was left speechless. I can still walk through, he muttered. Not really. Clothes shouldn't be on the floor. They just fell there. They wouldn't if you washed, dried, and folded them properly. And you should pack up those magazines you've already read. You'll slip and hurt yourself. There was a sharp edge to her words, but Amain could tell she was genuinely concerned. He couldn't refute a single point. Last time she'd been there, they'd nearly slipped because the place was such a mess. Being scolded now was only natural. TCH. Unable to argue back, Amain grimaced and accepted the container from her. Warmth slowly spread through his palm, comforting against the cold night air. So, I can eat this. I'll throw it away if you don't want it. No, no, no. I'll eat it. It's not every day you get a proper meal made by the angel herself. Please don't call me that. Seriously, he'd used her school nickname on purpose, but her pale face immediately turned red. It seemed being called Angel genuinely embarrassed her. From her perspective, Amain realized it was understandable. Being praised like that all the time probably wasn't pleasant. Her cheeks flushed, and she glared at him with eyes that looked almost teary. Amain could only grin. Sorry. I won't call you that anymore. Any further teasing would genuinely upset her. They weren't close enough for that kind of joke anyway. Mahiru cleared her throat, regaining her composure, though her cheeks were still faintly red. I'll accept this gratefully, Amain said. And you don't have to apologize for me getting sick. We're even now, she replied. I took care of you then, and this is for my own satisfaction. Still, I'm concerned about how poorly you take care of yourself. I get it. Given how often she saw him in a miserable state, her concern wasn't surprising. Even now, the entrance behind him was a mess. She'd seen it before, there was no hiding it. Please eat proper meals and live a proper lifestyle, she said seriously. Are you really not my mom? As she continued lecturing him with a straight face, Amain could only reply tiredly. After she left, he carried the container inside, dug out disposable chopsticks, and sank onto the sofa. How would her cooking taste? The porridge she'd made before had been good. Even with his dulled senses from the cold, the warmth and flavor had settled gently in his stomach. Given that, he had some expectations. Carefully, he opened the lid. A warm, comforting aroma rose immediately. Inside were simmered root vegetables and chicken. The soup was lightly colored, with bright orange carrots and green beans adding contrast. Everything had been cut into bite-sized pieces. His appetite, barely sustained by jelly, stirred. He split the chopsticks and brought a piece of carrot to his mouth. It's good. The flavor was immediately clear. The seasoning was mild, just as one would expect from health-conscious Mahiru, but the broth was rich and deep. This wasn't powdered stock. It was made from bonito flakes and kelp. The difference was unmistakable. He chewed slowly, savoring how the flavor of the stock and vegetables spread across his tongue. The vegetables were fresh and had absorbed the broth perfectly. Amain usually avoided vegetables, but even he enjoyed this. There wasn't much chicken, almost as if the dish was gently telling him to eat more vegetables. But what was there was tender and well-cooked, without a single fault. The ingredients were simple, but the dish clearly showed skill. This wasn't cooking from someone who'd just learned. It was practiced and thoughtful. It'd be perfect with rice. Unfortunately, he hadn't cooked any, and he'd run out of rice anyway. Too late now. He regretted not buying more earlier. She really is amazing. So Amain silently praised the girl who excelled at academics, sports, and housework, yet grew flustered and unhappy whenever she was called an angel. As he continued eating, he savored the gentle, ideal flavor of the simmered vegetables.